This is going to continue to get worse, and they're going to have to do something about it. Now, I don't know if they'll go so far as to enact the 25th Amendment or to talk him into resigning based on this cognitive issue and admit that they were wrong about that. But there are other ways that they could get rid of him, and I see them looking the other way while some of this Hunter Biden stuff blows up, and maybe just letting him fall on his sword like that. I think that they will look for opportunity to throw him under the bus in the next few years and or in the next few months and try to get rid of him, because I think that they also know he cannot make it to the end of this term in 2024.
Well, that was former White House physician and Congressman Ronnie Jackson on the program earlier this month, questioning Joe Biden's ability to lead amidst talk on both sides of the aisle about who will be the Democrat nominee in 2024, despite Joe insisting that he plans to run for re-election. This is the president's approval rating hit a new low this week of 38%. Joining me right now on whether Biden will be on the ballot in 2024, let alone finish this first term, is Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk. He's out with a new book, The College Scam: How America's Universities Are Bankrupting and Brainwashing Away the Future of America's Youth. He is here along with Miranda Devine, a Fox News contributor and author of The Laptop from Hell: Hunter Biden, Big Tech, and the Dirty Secrets the President Tried to Hide. Good morning to you both. Thank you so much for being here. Miranda, I want to get to your latest reporting that you say proves Joe Biden knew about Hunter's deals. But first, do you agree with Ronnie Jackson that he may not be able to finish this first term?
Look, I think there's probably a 50-50 chance of that, although the big obstacle for the Democrats changing horses midstream is Kamala Harris, whose popularity is really rock bottom and her performance is woeful. But look, Joe Biden has done what they brought him in to do, and that was to fool American voters into thinking that he was a moderate, that he would unify the country, that he was honest Joe. And I think the opinion polls show you that the American people have been red-pilled. They now see who Joe Biden really is, and there's no coming back from that. So I think probably they'll use long COVID or some health reason to bundle him off if they do decide to do that. I don't think that they will use the Hunter Biden embarrassment that is going to come down the pike next year. But Joe Biden certainly won't want to give that any credence. So whether or not they use Joe Biden's sort of feebleness to morally blackmail the Republicans into not pressing hard on his family's corruption is another issue.
Charlie, what about the Democrats and their plans to set up a different candidate for 2024? We've got a new survey by University of New Hampshire. Pete Buttigieg is leading the pack. Joe Biden comes in at number 2. Kamala Harris is at number 7. Your thoughts on his own party setting the stage for a different candidate?
Yeah, there's so much to take away from that poll. The sitting vice president is number 7 in a New Hampshire poll, and the head of transportation is number 1. Anyway, yeah, so look, I don't think Joe Biden's going to run in 2024. I actually think he's going to finish his term because he's actually more useful that way. Whether it be some sort of health excuse or whether it be some sort of legal excuse that they don't actually say publicly, it's all about politics. The approval ratings are just abysmal, especially with younger voters, by the way, Maria. And we're seeing a great realignment happen right now that are making a lot of Democrats incredibly nervous. Hispanics are becoming Republicans in record numbers. Young people are defecting from the Democrat Party. And because of this, I think Democrats are saying, wait a second, we have to get a new leader and change things completely.
And then a very serious situation developing around China. China's watching Biden's weakness, preparing a power grab, not just in Taiwan, but right here on U.S. soil, including at dozens of college campuses. More on that after this break. And we will also get into the big guy. Stay with us.
Let me be clear. The intelligence community doesn't believe that because there's no intelligence that supports that. And we have shared no intelligence with Chairman Schiff or any other member of Congress that Hunter Biden's laptop is part of some Russian disinformation campaign. It's simply not true.
And that was the truth in October 2020. It was former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe setting the record straight with me on the legitimacy of Hunter Biden's laptop on Mornings with Maria back in October of 2020. Just weeks before the election, he will join us later in the hour this morning to weigh in on a new whistleblower's claim that the FBI falsely labeled the laptop as disinformation to help Joe win the election. And we're back with Miranda Devine and Charlie Kirk. And Miranda, we saw all of the spies who lied, and the Post put it on the cover, right in the face of what John Ratcliffe was telling us. He told the truth, and 50 others were signing their name to this disinformation note. Your reaction as we see this text from James Gilliar saying, I don't see how this would work for them. Your thoughts on what we saw there with the 50 intelligence agents lying. What can you tell us now?
Well, look, this new communication is really a bombshell, and it comes from a whistleblower who has gone to the Republican congressional investigators who are looking into Hunter Biden's laptop. And it's from James Gilliar, former Special Forces from in the UK, links to the UK intelligence. He's heard here talking to another of Hunter's associates about the New York Post story, which had just come out that day in October 2020, blowing the first story that we had on the laptop. And they're panicked, they're discussing it. What are the implications? Is Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, Joe's campaign, going to throw us under the bus? And James Gilliar responds basically with scenarios saying, no, the big guy is not going to throw us under the bus effectively. He refers to Joe Biden as the big guy. So this is just the sort of clinching moment that we needed to say, corroborate what Tony Bobulinski has already told us, which is that, yes, Joe Biden is the big guy who was in the laptop receiving 10% of one of the biggest deals that Hunter Biden and his uncle Jim Biden did with the Chinese.
It's just unbelievable. Charlie, the FBI, meanwhile, just warned us that China is trying to influence our elections. Obviously, they got their guy in there in 2020 and buying up land near U.S. military bases, critical infrastructure. Right. You're concerned about the Confucius Institute's centers on college campuses across the country. And we just heard from John Barrasso, one of the reasons he believes some of his colleagues voted for the CHIPS Pact is because those liberal universities are getting a ton of money. Yes. And they want to continue getting that money, and it's coming from the CCP.
It's a massive handout to higher education, a broken cartel. I talk about part of that in my book, The College Scam. But Maria, you hit on something so important, which is the Chinese infiltration is everywhere. It's our farmland, it's our universities, it's in our sports, it's in Hollywood, it's in our banking system. I mean, just one example, you have the Chinese Communist Party finalizing a land transaction in North Dakota, right near Grand Forks Air Force Base, that even Democrats and national intelligence saying this is not a good idea. Yet the Republican governor of North Dakota is inviting the CCP to go buy this farmland right near our military installations. You mentioned the Confucius Institutes. The Confucius Institutes are Chinese Communist Party installations on American college campuses that the Federal Bureau of Investigation has said this is a major national security threat. Now, thankfully, some of those are finally starting to shut down, but there's still dozens of them across the country. In what world is it acceptable, prudent, or wise for America to invite our greatest enemy, you could call it an adversary or rival, whatever, they're not our friend, into our universities, our farmland, our schools, near our children? It is backwards, and it is for some reason that I can't quite figure out, Maria, we are doing this to ourselves. I hope that these new Republican candidates will start to draw the line and say China has no business in our farmland or our schools.
Well, under the Trump administration, we were seeing a consistent string of indictments for the surveillance and for the intellectual property theft. But, of course, Joe Biden canceled the China initiative, Miranda. And now we see that the agencies, I mean, how many times can Christopher Wray tell us that China is the biggest threat and then do nothing about it? What's wrong with the FBI? We're going to talk with John Ratcliffe coming up as we are following this and have been for a long time. The FBI does not seem to be working for the American people, Miranda. I know you're working on a piece this week about this.
No, it doesn't. And look, there's just been a string of failures and scandals with the FBI. Ruby Rich, the gymnastics NASA, the Russia hoax, now Hunter Biden, and there's never any accountability. And Christopher Wray is showing up on Thursday in front of the Oversight Committee to be grilled. He always has a smirk on his face. He seems to be very happy with his own management of the agency, which is a disaster. I think the opinion polls show that the American people hold the FBI in contempt. That's a terrible thing for an agency that we spend $10 billion a year funding.
Yep, we're going to talk about that coming out with John Ratcliffe. And Charlie, congrats on the book, The College Scam, examining the impact college is having for our country. Inflation, big time there as well. Thank you to you both. We will continue to follow this situation.